series about the origins of ancient civilizations is being called the most dangerous show on Netflix. And Graham Hancock has a lot to say about this because we've all gone insane. He wrote the book Magicians of the Gods and many others. Watched Ancient Apocalypse, loved it, it's brilliant. Those threatened by it are so tired, but there has been resistance to new ideas throughout human history. Absurd that Graham Hancock was barred from going to a site in Ohio. And that's because they are not willing to consider they might have to adjust the timeline. The timeline of human history shifts all the time. Of course, we know that North American archaeology is basically non-existent, but we have all these Cahokia mounds and the Serpent of Ohio and various ancient giants found in the United States, dating back to 40, 50,000 years. Now, this trailer is for the docuseries Ancient Apocalypse, written and hosted by Graham Hancock, the British journalist who's been challenging the long-held options of the opinions by archaeologists about the nature of some of our earliest ancestors, as well as the age of advanced civilizations. WSD wrote that his most recent appearance on Joe Rogan, two scientists went on Joe Rogan and gave a great breakdown of how the Great Pyramids actually came to be, according to them. I'm ashamed to say that I listened to the whole 3.5 hours of the conversation. To sum up, Hancock's theories could take a dozen blogs, but to keep it as brief as possible, the Netflix show takes Hancock to various ancient structures around the globe, some of which, most notably, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and radically changed our understanding of antiquity when it was discovered in the mid-1990s. And because it dates back to about 11,500 years ago, a time in which anthropologists have always assumed humans were simple hunter-gatherers, and still thousands of years from being able to construct monoliths such as these, especially on such a massive scale. Hancock connects the dots between Göbekli Tepe and other gigantic ancient buildings around the world, from Malta in the Mediterranean to Mexico to the pyramids in Egypt, and finds similarities in the way they were built to support his theory that is controversial among scientists, to say the very least. Essentially, he looks at the periods these works were built that are seemingly far beyond what we thought these ancient cultures were capable of, notes how the timing aligns with the Younger Dryas period, the comet impact on our Earth that is believed to have caused a cataclysmic flood 12,600 years ago and created a 1,200-year-long ice age, and ties the event into Plato's reporting that the city of Atlantis sunk during that exact same time period. In essence, without even mentioning Atlantis by name, Hancock's hypothesis is that survivors of that highly advanced civilization went around the world sharing their technology and knowledge of construction, astronomy, language, art, and science, and these structures are the result. And to support his claim, he points out to how many of these cultures have origin myths involving a great god who came out of the sea who created them. And I do have a playlist of the Emerald Tablets written by Thoth the Atlantean, Hermes Trismegistus, claiming he describes their philosophy, their faith, their belief, and their very advanced technology. He says they were even abusing their technology, going against the high spirits, the divine spirits' commandments, and a lot of Atlanteans, including him, believed that it was just a matter of time before the divine spirit put an end to the Atlanteans. And a lot of Atlanteans did go to other areas of the world and set up new cities, established new cities. The first thing they did was build pyramids. He even claims in the Emerald Tablets that he claims he wrote that he had a spacecraft, and one of his spacecraft, stellar craft, by the way, is buried under a sphinx in the Giza Plateau. Now, going back to this, so that's more or less the SparkNotes version of the series. Frankly, there's also a lot of grandiose stuff in there, with Hancock constantly reminding us that he's been vilified by the scientific community for challenging their deepest held beliefs, and how he's been cancelled by big archaeology for speaking his truth and whatnot. And if we're being honest, there's none of what you'd call actual evidence to back up some pretty big assertions. As you'd imagine from a story that's 12 millennia old, you can do this, all you can do is look at what survived the centuries and theorize. But I find the whole idea that we are finding the remnants of a technologically advanced civilization that was lost to us due to a worldwide disaster so utterly compelling. I want to believe it, and the more examples he cites, the more plausible his bonkers theory becomes. And again, not everyone agrees. Hancock is way out on the fringe on all of this, and so naturally he's getting pushback, which is not only fair, it's entirely the natural you'd expect. I could not be more out of my depth on this whole topic, but there are experts in the field who challenge all the ancient apocalypse major assertions and point out Hancock's own son is an executive at Netflix. Make of that what you will. But recognize that, if nothing else, Hancock is making a public that is normally focused on what Kyle Jenner is wearing have a healthy debate about the roots of civilization and expanding the limits of human knowledge, which is a good thing, right? Wrong. It's not only not good, depending on whom you're talking to, it's downright dangerous, a threat to all that we would hold dear. Ancient Apocalypse is the most dangerous show on Netflix. Source: at that time of writing, Ancient Apocalypse has been comfortably sitting on Netflix top 10 list for several days. This presents something of a mystery. Ancient Apocalypse obviously has an audience, but who on earth is it? Ancient Apocalypse must be a TV program made exclusively for people who like to shout at you on Twitter. Of course it is. These people are Hancock's bread and butter. They're free thinkers who, through some bizarre quirk of nature, are often more perennially outraged than anyone else on earth. If he's right, and the history of humanity really is just the first 5 minutes of Prometheus, it would change everything we know about ourselves, but we certainly would not treat his hodgepodge of mysteries and coincidences as fact. That's the danger of a show like this. It whispers to the conspiracy theorists in all of us, and Hancock is such a compelling host that he's bound to create a few more in his wake. Believing that ultra-intelligent creatures helped to build the pyramids is one thing, but where does it end? Believing that election fraud is real, believing 9/11 was an inside job. Worse, if you were feeling particularly mean-spirited, you could suggest that Netflix knows this and has gone out of its way to court the conspiracies. Many swore by the idea that a white Nordic superior race, people of purest blood, had come from Atlantis. As a result, Himmler set up the SS unit, the NRBR, the Bureau of Ancestral Heritage, to find out where people from Atlantis had ended up after the deluge had destroyed their homeland. And that in part explains why the myth of an ancient lost civilization is so useful. It's a basic tale of a rise and fall that can be corralled and exploited for all sorts of causes. Hancock, who describes himself as a journalist presumably to avoid being called a pseudoscientist, takes the story to a new controversial level in suggesting that survivors of such a deluge were the instigators of the great works of other civilizations from Egypt to Mexico and Turkey to Indonesia. As Cardiff University archaeologist Flint Dibble states, such claims reinforce white supremacist ideas. They strip indigenous people of their rich heritage and instead give credit to aliens or white people. In short, the series promotes ideas of race science that are outdated and long since debunked. Okay then, let's review. So watching a show about archaeology means you're likely to be a rageholic Twitter troll, and to question the current established theories of an ever-changing science in the wake of new discoveries makes you a denier. To be interested in a tale of mythic lore of a lost civilization that dates back to Plato of ancient Greece and wonder if there's some grain of truth in it means you're a Nazi sympathizer. To explore archaeological digs from around the world to speculate as to whether there's some ancient connection means you want to start laying the tracks to Buchenwald. And Graham Hancock suggests that something might have lived in a city that was more advanced than the rest of the world 10,000 years before Christ, confirms him as a supremacist. Have I got that right? I mean, like I said, he never mentions Atlantis by name, but assuming that's what he means, and I do, he automatically assumes Atlantis was whiter than the folk music festival in Provo. And in thinking this, he's secretly harboring attitudes. Every non-Atlantean on Earth has hatred in his heart for people who've been dead for 120 centuries. I guess you can't please everybody, and while I think that's criticizing a theory that is admittedly wacky sounding and pretty far-fetched, comes with the territory I don't see how you advance science by charging someone with being dangerous, quote-unquote, encouraging conspiracy nut jobs or wanting to carry out the final solution just for coming up with the hypothesis about the distant past of our species. This is not poking holes in ideas, it's trying to get someone to shut up and go away, plain and simple. And is exactly the kind of tactics they used to silence people who said the earth revolves around the sun and humans evolved from apes. You call them dangerous and claim their ideas are a threat to us all because they challenge the orthodoxy instead of arguing your own points. That to me is not only anti-science, it's exactly what dangerous really means. And this is from Collective Spark by Jerry Thornton, guest writer. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.